Right, hey guys, welcome back to Wired But Human and part two of my conversation with the sales leader that is Nathan Stokes. In part one, we discussed really like the uniqueness of his career, starting out as a pharmacist to then now working in the world of technology. We discussed that journey, and in part two, we actually kind of pick up from when I first met Nathan. What was it? 4 or 5 years ago now, from when we both worked together when Pax8 was launching in the UK. In this episode, we'll discuss his move to leadership and his quite unique perspectives on that. And towards the end, we'll also have a really serious discussion about men's mental health and why Nathan is so passionate about it. Yeah, enjoy.
I remember meeting you, and it was really interesting because we didn't have much to do with each other. With me being in marketing, well, I wasn't even in marketing then. I was kind of quite isolated in my role. But what I did pick up on was just that kind of the amount of relationships you built with so many people. Like I guess within quite a short space of time.
The team was very small, and I was very fortunate to be involved in a lot of the hiring. So I was doing a lot of the interviews with Aaron and others. So I got to know people and their personalities and their skills. So, being a part of that kind of bedrock of bringing people in, I felt responsible because so many people we brought in were junior in the industry, so they didn't have much experience. So I wanted to look after them and see what I can do to support them with feeling more comfortable, enjoying their job again, making sure they had an arm around their shoulder. So I think that played a large part. And I would also say I was very fortunate enough to get into the position where I was the sales manager for the UK team. So I think the highest point, I had about 30 direct reports, which was a crazy time, but a very fun time. So I was in this weird dynamic where I was kind of or one of the most experienced people there, which felt weird at the time, but also quite cool. I'd been a part of the process of hiring them, or being a part of the hiring process for a lot of these individuals, and now I'm I'm the direct report, or they're my direct report.
Had you really managed people like that, or at that level before?
No, I was team lead for a while, so I had about 5 or 6 individuals where I would support with kind of the issues and kind of getting things over the line and problem solving and motivation. But I was never their direct report. I was never their manager.
An Inti didn't manage people then?
No, and I didn't
That's
either.
mad, isn't it?
So yeah, so there wasn't any small team or warm up. It was, hey, there's 30 salespeople. Make sure they hit their number. It was like, oh,
Was that another moment in time when you're like, I really love to teach?
yeah, no, the motivation behind it was very easy for me. So that by no means was the role given to me. There was an interview process. It was an open role, etc. Very fortunate that they thought I was suitable for the job. And I think similar to what I was saying earlier around maybe that borderline obsession of going through that learning in that first phase of my career with the cold calling, entering the tech industry. I think it was kind of 2.0. Now I'm into management. What does that look? I've got my own ideas, maybe. I've got my own personal experiences. I've always been a part of football teams. So that kind of collaboration and seeing what kind of makes people tick. What does that good communication look like? I think one of the things that I love, and I've shared with a few people, is that when I went into managing the team, and I said it earlier around like the differences between leadership and management and things. I think one of the things I rationalized with myself was I didn't see myself as like higher up. I wasn't more senior. I wasn't more important. I wasn't this, that, and the other. I think the hierarchy of corporate world would have suggested that. But I didn't see myself like that. And for those that enjoy sports or don't enjoy sports, I'll use a sports reference, which is it doesn't matter what the sport is, you have kind of participants and you have often a manager or a coach or whatever else. But it's all kind of a house of cards, in my opinion. It's like, if you're a football manager and you've got some amazing players and your strikers scoring goals and your goalkeepers keeping clean sheets and your midfield keeping the ball and doing well, you're only as strong as each other. So you can be, if the striker's not scoring goals, the team isn't working. So instead of seeing myself as something higher up, is I'm playing a different part in this team. I'm not the player on the field anymore. I'm the one outside of the field, but my role is no more important than the striker, the goalkeeper, the defender. And I think that mental approach to it helped me maybe connect with more people. And
Just helped you throughout your whole career, really, I guess, hasn't it?
yeah, I don't chase those things. I'm very privileged to be in the position I am, but I
But
don't
how
chase
do
them.
you, interesting question, it must be quite challenging if you have a quite strong belief in how a great team should be run. I guess, how do you deal with people who are different characters in those situations? Because it could get quite emotional.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've always been a people first kind of manager or person. Do you know what I mean? I always want to make it of all the people, it was Richard Branson, I think it was, this quote, which is, um, don't worry about the company, worry about the people. The people look after the company. It was something along those lines. And I think that always stuck with me, which is like, you can drive metrics, numbers, behaviors. If the person is not happy, and I think you can say that in any part, you can look at romantic relationships, you can look at workplaces, you can look at fitness goals. If you're not motivated, happy, if you're not enjoying the thing you're plugged into, you're never going to get the best out of it. So, like, I saw my role as, okay, cool, I've got more experience than them in this field or in this role or what have you. That's fine. So maybe I've got some wisdom to part with them. But my job was more around making sure they're seen, they're heard, they're motivated. I understand how and it does take a lot more emotional investment, especially when I have 30 folks, different personalities. Do you know what I mean? Different lifestyles, different ages. But that effort, that emotional effort that you put into it, it pays in abundance. Going back to the point I made around me being like opinionated or like to have a debate or what have you, I think I think taking a step back and um, reminding yourself that you're not always going to be right. So, like, I may have an idea of how something should work or could work. That's not to say it's the best way. It might be the best way through the version of how I do things, but it's not necessarily the best way. So, if I see something that I don't agree with, yeah, learn from it. Learn from it in regards to what would I do if I was in that position? What
Yeah.
could I suggest if there was a problem that occurred from it? I don't think that, it's not healthy or helpful for any judgment to come into place.
Talks a lot there about the journey with Pax 8, and obviously now you're in a different role, and a global role, I think, is it? Or at
A
least
mere wide role.
yeah. So a lot of travel and all that stuff.
Yeah, a bit of travel, yeah.
But it seems to me like, for anyone who's gone through the kind of high intensity, and I say new career 10 years ago, whatever, but still, like, grow, like new opportunities, new experiences. What's your work-life balance like for you, do you think?
It's got better. It's definitely got better over time. I think if you asked me a few years back, I would say it probably wasn't great at all. But it's definitely got better. I think I'm one of these people, though, and hopefully someone will connect with this, otherwise I'll feel very alone. But I'm one of these people that also needs to be kind of constantly doing something. So I think what I've done now is I've just used some of my passions to kind of disperse that into other elements. So very committed to my work. I'm also a father to the best 4-year-old on the planet. I've got massive interests into mental health, specifically men's mental health. So I diverse my time and energy into different things. But yeah, since that kind of, to your question though, and I think this is definitely something it would be good advice to my younger self, which is not necessarily pace yourself, but give yourself that separation between work and life. I think, like you said, like I think I've had more roles than years in this industry. So there's been quite a lot of chopping and changing, and all of it for the good. But there's definitely been times where maybe I've forgotten to live a little bit.
Yeah, and do you think then, when you've gone through that process of realizing that, life, what does my life look like outside of work, and you honed in on more of the importance of that, and I imagine a kid is gonna help with that. Has that then changed maybe some of the career decisions that you've had to make, and how have you found dealing with that, given that was probably quite a big change from this kind of take everything on as it comes? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, becoming a father and I'm sure other fathers would agree, it's one of the biggest transitions you ever make in life. You know, your whole priorities shift, your emotional connections, everything, your motivation. So for me, when my son was born, there was that massive switch where it's like my responsibilities are not just work, um it's my little boy as well. So I think that helped a lot. And my the decisions I make now are, what can I do? You know, it's almost become like ground zero, to the point where it's like, what can I do to be as productive as I can in my role in the organization I work for, whilst then when the laptop closes, I go and become Nathan outside of work, a father, a friend, whoever else. And I think the decisions I've made isn't not necessarily career based ones, but more work behavior ones. How am I structuring my work? I think I was, you know, when you get lost in it, or when I got lost in work, be busy doing this, doing that, it was more just diving headfirst into everything. Where now it's more, when you're taking work on, when you're coming up with the next idea, when you want to drive something, everything's a lot more intentional now. Things are a lot more planned out. You know, you think about where time could be afforded, what you're going to need, what length of time you may need, rather than just trying to run on the treadmill as fast as you possibly can.
Were there ever times where maybe you were taking so much on, or I don't know, you were so all encompassed with your career, Nathan, where maybe, I don't know, then when it came to selling what maybe there was a part of you that didn't feel like it was you? And how did that affect a salesperson who generally,
High
needs,
spirits.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And was that hard?
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, my passion for mental health, I think, with like a lot of causes, stems from personal experience. I think lots of people dive into passions, especially charitable actions, through personal experience, whether it's themselves or a loved one, or so forth. And if I'm being honest, if you ask me what my definition was of mental health, or could I describe mental health like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I probably couldn't even answer the question. I was so kind of oblivious to it and ignorant to it. Um, where going through kind of my own personal struggles has changed my whole kind of outlook on what I do in life, where I give myself space, what I understand of my own thoughts and feelings. Which, going back to your point around, if people see me as like a respectable member and a mentor, or someone who can support others, it's changed also how I communicate with others. You know, it's not just about work things; it's about how people feel, how people are dealing with their um, outside of work life. So yeah, so for me, it was personal experience that made me more passionate about mental health.
You don't have to talk about it if you don't want, but what were those? What was that personal experience that, I guess, made you become someone who then can speak now, or became an ambassador, or at least some supporting mental health?
Yeah, I mean, there was quite a few things. I think if I was to put it underneath like a single umbrella, I think there was a lot of masking. You know, a lot of um, being a version of me where I felt like I had to be it, rather than maybe how I was actually feeling at the time. I think there was a lot of, you know, life moved very quickly for me, like it does for others. And I don't think I gave myself enough time mentally to kind of adjust to those moments with the transitions of how quick life was. And it all kind of came tumbling down. So, um,
Is that because you thought you've done a good job of? I don't know. I think sometimes, like, maybe kind of more high functioning people, they're quite good at juggling plates, right? And
right.
it's like plates never really drops. I can, I can do so much here,
Yeah.
but until something happens, it's almost hard to.
Right. Until there's that emergency, nobody really looks after. No, it's such a valid point. I actually did a talk at work recently, me and my colleague Ben, around men's mental health, as November is recognised as Men's Health Month now, and traditionally Men's Mental Health Month. And I think, yeah, we spoke about that. We spoke about kind of specifically men in kind of crisis, and then kind of mental health maintenance. And this idea was like quite new for people to understand, or to maybe hear for the first time, which is, often we don't address anything. And it's not just mental, it's also physical. Sometimes you can have that pain in a joint or a pain somewhere, and you never really go to the doctor until it's like stopping you from walking, or it's, you know, whatever else. And I think mental health is one of those things, specifically in with men in the culture of kind of the Western culture of today is it's never really been addressed. It never. The examples I was given on the talk was I can speak to any of the lads in the room, and they'll tell me about their new diet craze, the exercise they're doing, what they're doing at the gym. Talking about their physical health has no boundaries to it whatsoever, whether they're injured, doing well, or anything in between. But the mental side, especially if it's not great, it gets sugar coated, masked, held back, and all that does to you is continue to kind of apply like this internal pressure until something pops it, and then that's when something goes wrong. That's when, sadness really becomes a thing, dare I say, depression. That's when people start suffering more paranoia, anxiety, and the list goes on. And it's that topic for me is more around what can we do to preempt that. Yeah, what are we putting in? Because again, if I ask those questions, if I asked you maybe, or anyone who's watching, like if I directly asked you, what are the 2 or 3 things that you have in place as a routine to look after your mental health today? You may have something. You may say, Nathan, I go to the spa, or I do my exercise, I journal, I meditate. Brilliant if you do. But I think my opinion is most men won't have those default 3, 4, 5 things. Where if I said to you, hey, what do you do for your health? You'd be like, I make sure I get a couple of pints of water in me. I take my morning vitamins. I try and get fruit and veg.
But also talk about it in a way they're really proud of as well.
Right.
And celebrate it.
Exactly.
Is there a difference between men and women there, do you think, in that with regard?
Sadly, yeah. I mean, I won't get into the specifics on how it's managed or dealt with, but if we look at the global data, which is also very, very similar to the UK, and I don't want to make this too doom and gloom, but if you look at suicide rates as an example, 75% of all suicides, so 3 out of 4 are men, and that's been consistent for the last 4 years or so. If you look, and then there's another statistic around men seeking help as well. So, what does that look like through the means of like the NHS and stuff like that, which is a lot lower. So we know we've got the problem because the most extreme part of men's mental health is clearly signifying that there's a crisis, where I think the World Health Organization's last statistic at the start of November, entering into Men's Mental Health Month, suggested we'd lost over 500,000 men this year. So that's a lot, right? That's a staggering number. And if that was associated to a disease, which people should see depression as, but if that was associated to maybe a disease or a pandemic or anything like that, that would be global news. But it doesn't seem to be when it comes to addressing men's mental health. But then for me, I also try and zoom out from the topic. So if you look at men in the scenario where men dominate imprisonment, men commit and suffer more with violent crime. Men are more likely to be hospitalized because of drug abuse or alcohol abuse. So when you zoom out, you go like, well, even the behaviors circling around this gender are looking fairly negative. And I think I'm such an advocate of this term of trying to find peace in life. It doesn't matter where you find it or how you find it, but trying to find an element of peace, because whether it's this horrible doom and gloom number of this 75% of men are taking their own lives, or out of all suicides, it's more directed towards men, or maybe it's the imprisonment or anything in between. I don't think we would live in a world where these statistics would be present if there were more content men that found peace quicker. The acceptance really that I've got, because like I said, I've been quite passionate about this for about 4 years now. And I think the thing that I've come to accept, or I came to accept fairly quickly, is to drive this level of change to where we could freely speak about this, or it becomes like more natural in conversations between men. We're really seeking a cultural shift, which is not easy to do, right? It's not easy to do at all. So we're seeking a cultural shift in how men's relationships are, both with themselves, other men, and the association to mental health or feelings. I don't mind how it's worded or phrased. And it's the work that will be done now that will springboard this into the next generation, or make it more relevant for someone else to talk to. Me suffering with what I suffered with, and then coming to learn that lots of other men are suffering with this, but nobody's talking about it. I think for me, that was one of the biggest things, because when I was going through what I went through, even though it's like I've journaled about this. It's like a really weird scenario where I know I had people around me, you know, family members and, you know, a couple of friends or whatever else, but I never felt as alone as I did during that time. And it's like a really, it's a really unique scenario because I hadn't formed enough connections or trust, shall I say, in that part of my life where I couldn't stop being Nathan, the character, Nathan the masculine, Nathan the energetic, passionate person, even though that is who Nathan is. But sometimes Nathan wanted to just be a bit sad, or Nathan wanted to release, or Nathan wanted to do whatever else. I didn't have that in my life to be able to then be like, okay, I'm going to cross this barrier and say this thing. And ironically, a lot of this talk has been around communication, right? And when I was doing this talk around men's mental health in work recently, it's we spoke about this, which is one thing saying we want men to open up more, or we want men to share with loved ones, family members, friends. But I think when I say like this cultural gap or this cultural problem, is I don't think we're always well equipped on how to communicate it. It's like what is that specific feeling? So there's some irony to it where it is really around communication. And I think if anyone is listening going like, oh, then maybe that resonates with me, or I don't know where that first place is, I would encourage you to try, if you're worried about going to a therapist, a friend, a loved one, try just with yourself. And what I mean by that specifically is whether it's titled journaling or whether it's writing things down, just get something out of your head onto paper. And what I often encourage is just do like one of those, what we did at school, like a mind map. Just write your name in it and then just put attachments on there and just write emotions that you recognize you felt over the course of the last week. And also the encouragement of like, even if you're not in a crisis scenario, make it a maintenance thing. So like similar to going back to the fruit and veg or the exercise, even though exercise is fantastic for your mental health, consider if you haven't even thought about it, because some of this discussion has been around career projection or moving into a new industry, fast evolving jobs, whatever it may be. You know, it doesn't, if you've got ambitions to launch something, to achieve something, to be the best partner, be the best father, whatever the thing is, you're going to get the best out of whatever you want. You should also focus on your mental, because it's going to be the door opener to so many things. It will allow you to feel more things. It will allow you to be more creative. It will allow you to get more rest. It's just, it's such a worthwhile investment that I think we don't invest enough into.
I love how now we've covered a load of different areas here in terms of getting to where you are, I guess, now.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, we took a little pause on the career journey, I guess, at the kind of beginning or like kind of launch of Pax8 UK in Europe. And then I think kind of we're at that phase of you then having your child, and that must, as you said, huge change in that. And it seems like a lot of personal discovery with that. And that must also be amazing to kind of go through that and see that shift in yourself when you have a child and those responsibilities. But I guess my question now is to you, you know, are you happy?
Yeah, I would say I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. Yeah. Yeah, I can say that so confidently. Yeah, I'm definitely the happiest I've ever been.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, just the question is why, and I'm sure this could be such a long answer, but if you just
Careful what you ask.
one, I guess the main reason why that is.
Okay, main reason on why I'm the happiest I've ever been. There's so many ways I want to answer that. I would say the reason I'm the happiest I've ever been is because I know myself the best I've ever known myself.
Wow, love that.
Yeah.
That's great. I knew with you there'd be so much we could talk about, and I think without going into sort of every single part of your journey, actually, because I knew I was going to want to ask questions about all that stuff on the way. I think for me, I've learned so much about you today, and what have we done? We've just chatted here for probably the best part of an hour. I'm sure I'm going to edit it down for bits. It's going to be a hard one, this one. I'm not going to lie to you, but thank you so much for coming here today and chatting.
Just want to thank Nathan for that conversation. Yeah, we covered so much. I think it needed to be split into two, didn't it? If you enjoyed that chat and you're enjoying these videos, then please subscribe, obviously makes a massive difference when you're doing something like this for the first time. And yes, I was going to say, if you were watching perhaps the conversation we were having towards the end about mental health, if you want to reach out or ask about support, please just get in touch with me and Nathan. He said he'd be more than happy to help with that. But yeah, thank you for watching, and see you next time.